I used to sit in my driveway for 10 minutes before walking into my own house. Not because I didn't want to go in, because I was preparing, reading the light in the windows, guessing the mood from which car was parked where. I thought I was just being careful. It took me years to understand what I was actually doing. I wasn't coming home. I was clocking in to a job nobody hired me for, nobody paid me for, and nobody would let me quit. If you've ever stood outside your own front door taking one last deep breath, this video is going to explain something about your life that no one has ever said out loud. Welcome to Entangled in Chaos, where we take real experiences from inside dysfunctional relationships and use them to understand the psychology underneath. Understand the chaos, break the pattern. Let me take you inside an ordinary Tuesday. I walk in the door around 6. Before I've set my keys down, I've already done a full atmospheric reading. The television is off, that's data. My wife is in the kitchen, and the cabinet doors are closing a little harder than they need to, that's data too. Our adult son, who had moved back home that year after things fell apart for him, is in his room with the door shut and music leaking through the wall. Nobody has said a word to me yet, but I already know my assignment. I know that within the next 20 minutes, my wife is going to tell me, in a voice pitched somewhere between hurt and fury, about something our son said or did or failed to do. I know that if I respond with even a fraction of her intensity, the evening detonates. I know that my son is behind that door waiting to find out whether I'm coming as a messenger or an ally. One wrong word from me sends him out the front door into the night. And that resets the entire cycle at a higher level of crisis. So I do what I always do. I lower my voice about half an octave. I slow my movements. I become deliberately, almost theatrically calm, the way you'd move around a spooked animal. I listen to my wife without agreeing or disagreeing, absorbing the heat of it, nodding at the right intervals, offering just enough understanding to bring her temperature down a few degrees. Then I knock gently on my son's door and do the same thing in reverse, absorbing his version, his resentment, his despair, translating his mother to him the way I just translated him to his mother. By 9 o'clock, the house is quiet, everyone is settled. My wife falls asleep on the couch. My son comes out and makes a sandwich and even says goodnight. Boys. And I remember standing in the kitchen that night, in the silence I had personally manufactured, feeling something I couldn't name. It wasn't satisfaction. It was closer to the feeling a man has after unloading a truck by hand. Something had been moved, and all of it had been moved through me. Here's what I want you to notice about that Tuesday. Nothing about it was unusual. That was the routine. That had been the routine for years. I was the one who de-escalated, translated, buffered, softened, mediated, anticipated. When my wife spiraled, I steadied her. When my son melted down, I contained it. When they collided, and they collided constantly, I was the crumple zone between them. And I was good at it. That's the part that's hard to admit. I was genuinely skilled. I could feel a fight coming the way some people feel weather in their knees. I could redirect a conversation 2 exits before the crash. I had a whole invisible toolkit, the tone drops, the strategic silences, the carefully timed jokes, the private debriefs with each of them where I'd sand the edges off what the other one had said. I thought this was what love looked like. I thought this was what a strong man does for his family. Then came the weekend. I wasn't there. A work obligation took me out of town for 2 days. 2 days. I remember feeling almost guilty about how much I was looking forward to it, a hotel room, a quiet dinner, a night where I wasn't monitoring anything. I called home Saturday evening, no answer. I told myself that was fine. By Sunday morning, I had 11 missed calls. The details of what happened while I was gone matter less than the shape of it. A small disagreement over something so trivial neither of them could later remember how it started had escalated within a couple of hours. A screaming match, a punched wall, my son storming out, my wife in a panic calling everyone she could think of, and both of them separately leaving me messages that said some version of the same sentence. This wouldn't have happened if you'd been here. I drove home Sunday with my hands tight on the wheel, and somewhere on that highway, a thought arrived that I have never been able to unthink. They weren't wrong. It wouldn't have happened if I'd been there. I would have caught it early. I would have stepped between them at the first spark. I would have absorbed the charge before it could arc between them. And that's when the question surfaced, quietly, the way the most dangerous questions do. If the peace in this house only exists when I'm producing it, what exactly is my role in this family? I wasn't a husband who happened to keep things calm. I was calm, functioning as a husband. Let me pause the story here, because this is the moment everything changed for me, and it might be the moment something changes for you. What I discovered on that highway has a name. Psychologists who study family systems talk about how emotions and anxiety don't stay inside individuals. They flow through the family like current through a circuit. And in many families, especially chaotic ones, that current doesn't distribute evenly. It roots through one person. One person becomes the system's regulator, the human thermostat. Everyone else's emotional weather passes through them to be processed, buffered, and returned as something survivable. Here's the reveal that stopped me cold. I had always believed my family was calm because I was calm, that my steadiness was contagious, that I was teaching them, by example, how to regulate. The truth was the opposite. They weren't learning to regulate themselves. They were outsourcing regulation to me. Every time I absorbed my wife's spiral, she got relief without ever building the capacity to bring herself down. Every time I contained my son's meltdown, he got soothed without ever developing the muscle to soothe himself. My calm wasn't teaching them anything. My calm was making it unnecessary for them to learn. I wasn't the family's example. I was the family's substitute. To understand why this happens and why it's so hard to escape, you need to understand 3 ideas. I'll keep them in plain English. The first is co-regulation. Human beings are built to calm each other. It's how we start life. A baby can't regulate its own nervous system, so it borrows the parents'. The parent's steady heartbeat, steady voice, steady presence, the infant sinks to it. This is healthy and necessary in infancy. The whole point of development is that over time we internalize that steadiness. We learn to do for ourselves what others once did for us. Borrowed calm is supposed to become owned calm. But in some families, that handoff never happens. Some people reach adulthood still running on borrowed regulation, and they don't experience that as a deficit. They experience it as a need for you. When they're flooded with emotion, they don't reach inward for tools. They reach outward for a person. And if you're reliably available, reliably calm, reliably absorbent, congratulations, you're the tool. The second idea is how systems assign roles. A family isn't just a collection of people, it's a system, and systems care about one thing above all: stability, not health, not fairness, stability. If a family discovers that its anxiety can be rooted through one member and come back as calm, the system will build itself around that discovery, the way traffic builds itself around a bridge. And here's the cruel mechanics of it. The role is self-reinforcing in both directions. The more reliably you absorb, the more freely everyone else escalates because there's a net under them now. Why develop brakes when the car you're riding in has a designated braking system? And the more they escalate, the more vigilant you become because you've seen what happens when you're not fast enough. Their dysregulation grows, your hypervigilance grows. The system gets more stable and less healthy at the same time, and you experience that increasing stability as proof that what you're doing is working. The third idea is where regulators come from. Nobody applies for this job. It's usually assigned in childhood. Many of us who become the nervous system of our adult homes grew up in homes where an adult's mood was the most important fact in the house. We learned to read faces before we learned to read books. We discovered maybe at 7, maybe at 10, that we could change the emotional weather, make the joke at the right moment, go quiet at the right moment, become whatever the room needed. That discovery feels like power to a child. It's actually the beginning of a lifelong confusion, the confusion between being loved and being useful, between belonging to a family and being load-bearing in one. And so decades later, a man sits in his driveway reading the windows of his own house, and it doesn't feel strange to him. It feels like Tuesday. The hypervigilance that was survival at 8 years old has been rebranded as attentiveness at 48. The absorption that kept a childhood home from exploding is now called being the strong one, the calm one, the rock. The Stoics had a phrase I've come to love: some things are up to us and some things are not. The regulator lives in permanent violation of that line. He has taken responsibility for the one thing that was never his, other people's inner states, and in doing so, he has quietly abandoned the one thing that was his own. And there's a cost to that abandonment. Chronic vigilance isn't free. A nervous system that never stands down doesn't rest, it just idles at high RPM. The exhaustion that regulators feel isn't laziness or age. It's the toll of processing emotional traffic for multiple people around the clock for years. Caretaker burnout doesn't announce itself with drama. It announces itself with numbness, with sitting in driveways, with the strange grief of manufacturing peace you can't feel. Because here's the final twist of the knife. The regulator produces calm for everyone but himself. He's the one person in the house whose distress has nowhere to go. Who regulates the regulator? Nobody. That position doesn't exist in the system. The system was never designed for his feelings, it was designed out of them. Now go back with me to that ordinary Tuesday, the cabinet doors, the tone drops, the shuttle diplomacy between the kitchen and my son's room, and watch how completely the meaning changes. I used to see a man holding his family together. Now I see a system running exactly as designed. My wife escalating freely because 30 years of evidence told her something would catch her, and something always did, me. My son melting down without brakes because he'd never once needed his own, the house came equipped. And me, moving through it all with my lowered voice and my managed face, believing I was the solution. I wasn't the solution. I was the reason the problem never had to be solved. That's the sentence I want you to sit with because it's the one that rearranged my life. You cannot heal chaos by absorbing it. Absorption isn't healing. Absorption is storage. The chaos doesn't disappear when you take it in, it just changes address. It moves out of the room and into your body where it accumulates, invoice by invoice, in your sleep, your blood pressure, your capacity for joy. And absorbing it does one more thing, the thing that's hardest to face. It protects everyone else from the information they need. Consequences are how adults learn. When I stood between my wife and my son every single time, I wasn't protecting them from each other. I was protecting them from the experience of their own behavior, the only teacher that could have actually changed anything. The 11 missed calls weren't evidence that they needed me more. They were evidence of what my absorbing had prevented them from ever having to build. So what do you actually do? Not set boundaries. I promised you better than that. Here is what stepping out of the regulator role looks like in practice. First, learn to recognize the recruitment moment. Every escalation has a split second where the system reaches for you, the raised voice that's really aimed at you, the pause where everyone looks in your direction, the phone lighting up with a name and your chest tightening before you've even answered. That moment is the job offer. You can't decline a job you don't notice being offered. So for 1 week, don't change anything, just notice. Notice every time you feel your voice drop, your body still, your attention lock onto someone else's state. Each one is a clock in, count them. Most regulators are stunned by the number. Second, learn the difference between presence and absorption. You don't have to choose between managing everyone and abandoning everyone. That's the false choice the role offers you. There's a third option, staying present without taking the current. It sounds like this: I can see you're really upset. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm confident you can get through this. Notice what that sentence does. It offers connection without offering yourself as the processing plant. You're a witness to their storm, not the lightning rod for it. Third, return problems to their owners out loud, in words. When my wife wanted me to manage my son, the old script was to go knock on his door. The new script was one sentence. That sounds like something the two of you need to talk about directly. When my son wanted me to soften his mother, same move, other direction. The first 50 times, it feels like cruelty. It isn't. Handing someone back their own problem is a statement of respect. I believe you are capable of this. Absorbing it was the insult. Fourth, expect the extinction burst, because the system will fight your resignation. When a machine's most reliable part stops responding, the machine doesn't shrug, it escalates. The calls get more frequent. The crises get louder. You will hear in some form, "You've changed, and you don't care anymore. And here's what you need to burn into your memory in advance." That escalation is not proof you're needed. It's proof the pattern is breaking. A system in withdrawal always screams before it adapts. If you cave at the scream, you don't just restart the pattern. You teach the system exactly how loud it has to get next time. Fifth, begin regulating the one person who is actually your assignment. You've spent years monitoring everyone's nervous system but your own. Start the smallest possible practice of reversal. 3 times a day, ask yourself the question you've asked about everyone else. What is he feeling right now? About yourself. You'll be shocked how hard it is to answer. That difficulty is the measure of how long you've been gone. I still pause in the driveway sometimes. Old habits are patient. But the pause means something different now. I'm not reading the windows anymore, not calculating the evening, not preparing to clock in. I'm just taking a breath, the kind of breath a man takes when he's about to walk into his own home as a member of the family, rather than its infrastructure. Here's the observation I'll leave you with. A nervous system is invisible when it's working. Nobody thanks their spinal cord. And if you've been the nervous system of your house, you already know that particular invisibility. How the piece you manufacture is enjoyed by everyone and attributed to no one. How your best work is precisely the disaster that didn't happen, the fight that never started, the storm nobody knew was coming because you quietly stepped in front of it. You were never invisible because you didn't matter. You were invisible because you were load-bearing. But here's the thing about load-bearing walls. The building never asks how they're doing. And a family that has never once wondered who calms the calm one isn't a family that doesn't love you. It's a system that has never had to find out what you are when you're not absorbing, and honestly, neither have you. It turns out peace was never yours to manufacture. It was only ever yours to have. If this described your life more accurately than you were prepared for, you're exactly who this channel exists for. Subscribe, and next time, we'll untangle another pattern together. Understand the chaos, break the pattern,